I'm Mason Mount. You're listening to the London is Blue podcast.
Okay, so moving on from the players to the gaffer, the manager, Frank. Dan, I don't know anyone else I'd rather have read these fiery quotes than you right now. So feel free, light the emotional fire and let it rip.
Because I can help bring some soothing nature to it. Nick is banned from reading these. Lampard's reaction. So here's a couple of quotes. They're disappointing goals, mistakes that led to goals, individual errors, and if you do to lose football matches against good teams, I've got to be careful not to overanalyze this one because it's what you do, analyze all season and review things. What we have to do with that game is put it to bed because the only thing that matters is that we fight for top four and that we're still in the race because of how we've been this season. We have to put this game away very quickly, but I learned a lot. I won't forget that. You tend to learn more in tough moments and tough games, but that's for me to deal with moving forward. So those are just a couple of the quotes. I think the one that was probably the most interesting was when he talked about, I've learned a lot of things. It'll be a long answer. I didn't hear them because Sheffield United had more voice and personality, and that reflected in the way that they played. It's a absolute indictment, Nick, of the 16 players who made it onto the pitch today. And, you know, the whole couple matches ago where we talked about the playing for the badge in the dressing room and responding, you know, the way that Barkley and the rest of the team did then, very clear that there's a list of players who may have played their last game for Chelsea or have put themselves on the, you know, in the shop window.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking about this, right? Like, obviously Frank with a transfer window will be able to do things that he was not able to do at the beginning of the season. It does make me wonder, though, and I think Marco was kind of, you know, hedging towards this response. Yes, the players all had a bad game. Yes, everyone's probably tired. You know, yes, there were some unacceptable defensive lapses, and there have been all season. So, yes, you should be able to hypothetically put at least 50% of the blame, Marco, on the players, right? For making the mistakes. The manager can't go out there and physically do anything during the match. However, the thing is, every time I see these quotes from a manager, it makes me wonder what they work on all week, right? I mean, we have plenty of tape on Sheffield United and how they play, and we've already played them once this year. So we kind of get that they're going to sit back, be a counterattacking team, use their size advantage over us, and try and just hit us on the break a couple of times to see if they can nick something, right? Like, it shouldn't have been a shock yesterday. And for Chelsea to have 75% of the possession and do nothing with it means zero to me. You know, I would have rather gone out there with a Wolves-like approach and also just sit back and just maybe let the ball ping around the midfield for a little bit and see what happens, rather than consistently dribble it around their box and never shoot. So it makes me wonder what Frank is working on a little bit, which I think is what you were kind of getting to before the break.
Marco, what are your thoughts on that? Players versus manager and just lack of any end product, really?
Yeah, I mean, the positive is there doesn't appear to be any kind of issue where, you know, we've had in the past with managers and players at Chelsea when they've gone through a tough time and there's the inevitable line that the manager's lost the dressing room or there are cliques. There's no inference that that's the case. So the question is, you know, what are these guys doing to set themselves up to play these games? You know, we have a game plan when we go to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. We have a game plan when we're playing Pep Guardiola. We just didn't look like we had one yesterday. It was kind of like, well, give the ball to Pulisic because he's on form at the moment and see what the kid can do. But beyond that, it was bizarre, and its most bizarre was that weird passing sequence that we talked about earlier. I don't know. I mean, what goes on? What goes on the training pitch? How did Frank prepare his team to play Sheffield United yesterday? Because there was no evidence that there was any kind of plan. In fact, then to back that up, he changed it, didn't he, at half time?
Yeah.
So on came Alonso, who shuffled across to the left. Then we went 3 at the back and matched Sheffield United with 3-5-2. I mean, come on. That's what teams used to do against Chelsea when Conte reinvented football. So, it's weird.
Yeah, I talked about that in kind of the 3 ways Chelsea might lose. And it was that, hey, we're going to play against a 3-5-2 with overlapping center backs that we haven't seen since the end of August. We haven't prepared for this. It's on short rest. They've been playing it all season. And one of my concerns was, I don't know if we're going to be able to find our way through it because it's going to be so radical to what we've seen. And we didn't. We couldn't find space against this team. We were massively outnumbered in the midfield. And because of that, they just kind of swallowed us up. That's why I thought we could look at a 4-2-3-1. It can be a 4-3-3 in attack, or you can drop in with 5 in the midfield. Didn't do it. Hey, I don't get paid the big bucks. There's a reason for it. But to your point, Marco, when you try to analyze the performance, at least at halftime, you can kind of prep the players. You have a little bit of time to say, all right, we're going to change the system. This is what we're going to do. Here's where we're at. They're professionals. They're elite. They can make a change on the fly. It wasn't the most, foreign system to them. But then now we start talking about the Callum Hudson-Odoi substitution and the Ruben Loftus-Cheek substitution, and then a 2 at the front formation when Giroud came on for Pulisic. Now he's changed it so much, and for a third time, this wasn't a plan. He's just throwing the kitchen sink at him, hoping that the players figure it out on the pitch. And then to me, I appreciate the effort, but as much as you hated Maurizio Sarri because he'd put like-for-like substitutions on, the players going on knew what the plan was and what their tactics were. Now, whether or not they worked is a different question. But with Frank, it was a bummer to see him kind of run out of ideas and just started putting players on kind of randomly at the end without, I'm sure he gave them direction. But when you run on as a sub and you're like, oh, yeah, this and that, your players go, oh, yeah, okay, whatever. I'm just going to try to figure it out. And I think that was a bit of a bummer. Maybe 72 hours prep isn't a long time. He's got assistants that are working a match ahead and we're preparing and they have to deal with it. But again, there's no surprise what Sheffield was going to do. I don't know if we have the stat. I think this was someone put in our Discord or something. This was the 138th time Sheffield have lined up like this. And this is only Chris Wilder's 138th match doing this. And this is only Frank Lampard's 45th match with Chelsea doing it. And you can also see the
system. So he's lined up with the same formation. Yeah.
So it talks about Sheffield been doing this. They were fine-tuned. They were on the same page. They were synced up and cohesive. Chelsea were not, unfortunately, and it pulled us apart.